It's 4 o'clock and it's time for us to start this meeting of the Joint Standards Committee of the City of York Council. We have quite a few apologies. Apologies from Councillor Rowley, which is why I'm in the chair. And we also have apologies from Councillor Lomas. Councillor Whitcroft should be covering for them. And we also have apologies from Mr. Lee, our independent person. Councillor Whitcroft, welcome. No, it's all right. Before we start, do we have any declarations of interest?
Yeah.
Sorry, if I
I
can't-
won't specify the case, but I have a relationship with one of the people who is a complaint. I will deal with that. I'll explain it further in the when we come to the actual confidential section of the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Fisher. Councillor Chambers.
Apropos of the conversation I was just having with Francis, I wasn't aware being a resident in York was a disclosable pecuniary interest, for which I apologise. I am a resident in Strensall. I don't believe it's on my, because I would have to be a resident in York in order to be sitting here.
We can deal with that. That's a usual declaration for members to make, and it's recorded on the form and on the website, so we'll just make sure that our records are live.
At any
with
rate,
that.
just to put the record straight, I live in York.
Thank you, Councillor Chambers. Any other declarations of interest? Okay, so on to item 2, exclusion of press and public from the meeting during the consideration of annexes A and B to agenda item 9. Are members happy to agree to that? Okay, lovely. Moving on to minutes. To approve and sign the minutes of the meeting of the Joint Standards Committee held on the 7th of June 2023. That has been circulated. Any comments on any of those before we approve them? For those of you who were at that meeting? Okay. And then item 4, the minutes of the subcommittees on the 26th of June 2023 and the 18th of September 2020. Those of you who were there. Councillor Rawlings.
Chair, just before we agree those, I do notice that a meeting of the 18th September, the committee didn't have a parish council representative, which is against the norm. Now, that may well be that nobody was available, and because of a conflict of interest, I was not available at that meeting. I just want to make it clear that these should be held with a mix of City of York and parish council representation. And at that meeting, that didn't take place.
Thank you, Councillor Rawlings. We're having to approve it. Sorry, Councillor Runciman.
Oh, it's an interesting point. I'd like to hear Francis. So I can hear it. Everybody else. It's an interesting point that Francis' opinion on. If you're double-hatted, as many of us are, can you count in 2 categories, or can you only count in 1? I'm a parish council on 2 parish councils, as well as being city council. I'm not sure you can, but I'd be interested to hear what Francis says.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm not sure that I'm able to answer that off the top of my head. It will require me to consult
You'll find out, will you?
the Constitution and possibly the Local Government Act.
Yeah.
So it's what I need to take away.
Yeah.
Chair, if I can, the previous answer from previous monitoring officers was that it is how you are on this committee. So
Yeah.
if you're on this committee as a City of York, and as a
Yes, good point.
subcommittee, you go as a City of York councillor to the meeting. Therefore, in that particular query I was bringing up, there wasn't a parish council representative, even though some of the City of York councillors are also parish councillors at the time.
Oh, I'm sure Francis.
I'm
No.
not concerned that it happened on this occasion, Chair. It's just, it did happen, and therefore it's not the norm. And I believe there are probably good reasons why it wasn't available at that time, but it's just to make people aware for future meetings and appointments.
Good point. Thank you, Councillor Fisher.
I was just going to say I sit on the parish council and the town council as well. I'm not sure if we read the Constitution whether that mixed requirement the subject to the complaint is a parish councillor. I believe that's in the Constitution. I'd need that clarifying, but I think that may be the reason.
Francis, can you clarify for us on that one?
I am scrolling madly because that's my understanding as well. So by the end of the meeting, I will have an answer to that. But that, I think I've read that somewhere as well, and I think that it was for that reason.
Okay, so we have to approve those minutes to the subcommittees. Oh, sorry, Michael, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Just on a typographical thing, it says presence councillors Fisher, Pavlovic, Rowley and Lee. It's actually, just in case people thought there were two Lees, I think the first councillor Lee should be removed because he attended as an independent member.
Yes, thank you for that. So with that, are we happy to approve the minutes? Lovely, right. Okay, moving on to item 5, urgent business. I haven't got any urgent business. Nothing, got anything else, Francis, that's urgent? No. Moving to public participation, we have one registered speaker, Councillor Mark Waters, who will be speaking to us via the wonders of Zoom. If Councillor Waters is ready. And of course, he has 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Right. Thank you. I'm speaking to agenda item 9 and the open case against myself, which is reference 2023/07. That's been curated through the system by the monitoring officer and the standards set up at this local authority.
Councillor Watts, I'm
Well,
sorry to interrupt. Councillor Watts, I'm sorry to interrupt, and we will restore your timer. The provisions for the public speaking protocol is that there is no mention of anything that discloses personal information. That's part of the public participation protocol. So if you do want to address any individual cases, I'm afraid we can't permit that within the public participation.
So can I carry on?
Councillor Waters, you can carry on if you don't address any individual cases which would be in breach of the public participation protocol.
I was going to say that I realised in this forum that I can't refer to details of this case as I'll be shut down, as I've just been attempted to be, as potentially prejudicing the subsequent standards hearing, which I won't be having anything to do with either. So I'll just say that in the context of this council's refusal, albeit under the previous monitoring officer, to carry out a standards investigation into the previous council leader, chairing a staffing members' urgency meeting dealing with the former chief executive he refused to work with, and to which he was a respondent
Councillor
in an industrial
Waters,
tribunal case
Councillor Waters,
involving
that
huge
is
sums of
an
public money.
individual case, so I'm afraid we can't hear about that either.
Highlighted in the Mazars Public Interest Report, which is a public document, I might add, of April 2021, and in the context of the refusal of the council to investigate councillors telling other political parties to piss off, and I quote that verbatim, or not investigating councillors bringing the quasi-judicial planning process into disrepute, with I'll go to hell in a handcart before approving a
Councillor
greenbelt housing
Waters, if you
development.
continue, we will terminate this public participation.
Why? Can you explain
Because you
why?
keep talking about individual cases, which we've just told you can't do.
But they didn't become individual cases, did they? Because you refused to investigate them. I've been at these meetings and spoken about this before, and nobody's attempted to shut me down.
The public I can say to the mic. Yeah, so reading from the public participation protocol, which is Appendix 8 to the Constitution, paragraph 17 explains that in exercising their public participation rights, a member of the public, and we read a member of the public to include councillors because councillors are expressly allowed to use the public participation protocol, is entitled to express views, positive or negative, about the council, but must not say anything which is defamatory or discriminatory, make any personal attack on an officer and or member, or disclose confidential information or exempt information, including personal information. Well, members of this committee have just agreed to exempt those parts of the papers today which pertain to individual cases, and on that basis it was my view that there should be no submissions made from Councillor Waters on individual cases.
Councillor Whitcroft.
Thank you, Chair. And just sorry for my own clarity, that's Appendix 8, Part 17 of the Constitution. Thank you very much.
Right. Oh, sorry, Councillor Pavlich.
Thank you. Although, whilst the councillor was speaking in his public participation role, I wasn't quite catching what he was saying because I think there were other comments that was going on from the room. Was he specifically talking about cases that had been investigated or cases that had not been investigated?
The early part of the submission he was making was about his cases.
Yes.
And that was that point that I first intervened.
Yes,
because I
that's
thought it was
right.
very important that we
Yeah.
didn't delve into that.
Yeah.
He then proceeded to talk about cases which had not been investigated, but were about,
Subject of complaints.
well, he started talking about the Councillor Aston, Mary Weaston.
Situation, right. Okay.
Councillor Fisher.
Can I also point out, he alluded to a case involving me, which was fully investigated, went to a full hearing and was completely thrown out. Thank you.
Anyone else before we move on? Okay, we'll move on to item 7, register of members' interest treatment of sensitive interests and civility in public life. Francis.
So this report brings members' attention to two things. One is the monitoring officer's treatment of requests for sensitive interest to be withheld. And that was just making transparent the approach that the monitoring officer has taken, so that members who wish to avail themselves of similar treatment are aware what the stance is. So that's fully explained, and the legal basis for that is fully explained in the report, but I'm happy to answer any queries about that. The second part of the report is really an expansion on matters that this committee have discussed before, and which really relate to why members might wish to have certain information remaining private, and that's if they feel that they may become victims of intimidation or harassment. And it was to bring members' attention to materials which are published by the Local Government Association, and which they invite members, councillors in parish councils and in unitary authorities, all types of councillors, to avail themselves of those materials. Things like badges and infographics for their social media accounts, which might go some way to setting the tone for public interaction. And I know that this committee before has had discussions about the perhaps lack of level playing field. Members can become the subjects of complaints and are expected to hold themselves to a standard. And of course, standards in public life is all about people who undertake public duties meeting a certain threshold of behaviour. But actually, I know there are members on this city council who found themselves with little perceived protection against members of the public who go beyond what an ordinary person would count as civil and respectful treatment. So it was looking at ways that balance might be redressed, or that the appropriate tone might be set, and that's with a view to encouraging really positive citizen engagement, because another thing the council is clearly most eager to do is harness you know, powerful citizen engagement, and it's setting boundaries around that, and whether there are any materials within this publication by the Local Government Association which members of the Standards Committee think might assist in supporting that positive framework for citizen engagement.
Thank you, Francis. Councillor Pavlovich.
In the light of, and I probably should have declared this right at the outset, but I didn't realise the way the legal officer's conversation was going to go, is I am subject to that exemption, and my information is withheld on the grounds of sensitivity, specific sensitivity, and I think I therefore may well be conflicted in having an opinion on this. So I think I will I won't contribute to this further discussion. I can leave if you want, but or I can just not speak.
Just to stay where you are and just not speak, I think. Any other questions from other members? Councillor Fisher.
Thank you. This is another matter that's concerned me for a little while, is of course members can be found in many cases through the public version of the electoral register, and I wonder if we need to also advise members who have a sensitivity about their home address to ensure that they are not on the public version of the electoral register as well, because otherwise people can search it quite easily. It's a public document unless they're specifically opted out of it.
Thank you, Councillor Fisher. Anyone else? Councillor Rawlins.
Chair, I must say, I think it's somewhat sad that we are in a position whereby members feel, and I appreciate their views, that they need to remove their name and their contact. As in a democratic society, really, that contact at base level is critical to what we're all here for, and that's engaging with the public. The bit that concerns me is that some people remove their names at the moment. I have no problem with the actual request for that to be formalised, because they have employment issues from the past, they have other issues that have particularly led to it. However, it does appear to me that some are going round a circle of poor use of social media, leading to comments on social media that are inappropriate, but nevertheless are very threatening, and therefore the removal of the name. And the individuals involved need to start thinking about whether they remove their name from the register or whether they adapt how they interface with the public on social media, because some of it could well be self-generated. So I think there are joint issues here, and whilst I don't have a problem with what's being proposed, as Councillor Fisher has just said, addresses are available elsewhere. I mean, register of interest would also state if you had a financial interest in a property, and therefore that would also come through on the same issue, I believe. So I'm disappointed. I support the proposal, but I'm disappointed that democracy in York has got to this stage.
Councillor Whitcroft.
Thank you very much, Chair. I agree with Councillor Rawlings that it is a real shame that it's come to this, and that councillors feel the need to withhold such information. But I am pleased to see that this opportunity is being provided in an easier or more formalised way through this report. I don't know whether necessarily, I may be paraphrasing you here, Councillor Rowan, but I don't know whether action through social media necessarily precipitates this. There can be things that happen in an individual's personal life or aspects around that, and also we are human beings, and we all have our own problems that we may face up to, may have had traumatic experiences in the past. That shouldn't disqualify us from holding office. In terms of engagement, despite being quite a young person, I'm very skeptical of social media as a usage. I actually don't know whether it's necessarily a very effective way of engaging. I think it can often lead to firestorms and online and things like that that may harm rather than promote communication. So I prefer to do in-person engagement, and there's nothing to stop councillors from being able to do that whilst also deciding to have their information withheld. So I'm pleased to see that the report is providing the opportunity for councillors who wish to do so to do so. But yes, I just wanted to add that. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. Thank you, Councillor Whitcroft. Anyone else? Councillor Fisher again.
Yes, I agree, it's a sad thing, but I've just quickly done a search on my phone and I found 4 cases of councillors whose cars have been set on fire outside their home. That's the sort of problem we are dealing with, people sometimes who may not have quite the same view of local government as we do. And that's why we have to be extremely careful. I'm perfectly happy for my details to be on because everybody in Strenton knows where I live anyway. But, you know, there are other people who may have serious concerns about some people with issues in their ward, and I totally support the right to remain completely anonymous and keep your home address a secret.
Any other questions? Are we happy to go with the recommendations on the reports? Members show? Yeah. Thank you. Yes, so we were trying to make the review of the work plan. Francis?
Thank you, Chair. Members will immediately realise that the report that was promised on the 28th of September, a preliminary report on the review of the standards, policies and procedures, is not within the pack. That's sitting with me. Unfortunately, the conversation that that I needed to have with the monitoring officer and with the chair and vice chair of this committee wasn't arranged until after the summer break, and it was literally 2 or 3 days before the deadline for papers. So there's a bit of work that I need to do on that and bring it back. So apologies to members that they don't have that report, but my proposal is that that be moved into November. Subject to that, it's just for members to discuss whether they feel that there are any items lacking in this work plan.
Thank you, Francis. Any questions, any points on this? Members? Are you happy with that? Good. Okay, we'll move on to item 9, monitoring reports. Obviously, as usual, in 2 parts, the public part and then the private parts. Anything on the public part, first of all? Councillor Fisher. In the public, yes. In that case, we'll finish the bit where the public can listen in.